to the May 26th, 2021 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. I am Candace Breyer, Chairperson of the Zoning Board of Appeals. This meeting is being held electronically to protect public health and safety due to the COVID-19 virus and to comply with orders issued by the Governor, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and/or the Washtenaw County Health Department. We intend to conduct this meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient if there are technical issues. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a 9-person volunteer board nominated by the mayor and approved by City Council. First, we will hear from Planning Services, represented tonight by John Barrett. Then the applicant or their representative will make their presentation. Applicants will have 5 minutes in which to make their presentation. Staff will keep time and announce when 30 seconds are remaining. We may ask questions of either the city or the applicant. We will acknowledge any written comments received by the board. We will allow an appearing party to express their support or objections. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 877-853-5247 or 213-338-8477 and enter meeting ID number 938-1648-1007. This information is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN Channel 16, AT&T Channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn. You need not have signed up in advance. In order to be called on to speak, callers must press *9 to raise their hand. Callers will then be called upon by city staff one by one using the last 3 numbers of their phone number. Upon being called on, callers will hear an audible announcement that the host is allowing them to speak. We ask that callers start by stating their name and address and speak from a quiet place and mute any background noise such as television so that we can hear you directly. City staff will announce when callers have 30 seconds left of their 30-minute comment period. After 3 minutes, they will be placed on mute so that we can proceed to the next speaker. The board will then discuss the appeal and formulate a motion to approve the appeal. 5 affirmative votes of the board will be required for an appeal to be granted. Finally, any qualified party who is aggrieved by a decision of the board can appeal that decision to the Washtenaw County Circuit Court on a timely basis. Moving on to roll call. As previously, please state the state, county, city, township, or village where you are attending the meeting from. I am here attending from the city of Ann Arbor. Mike Daniel.
Here.
Hold on, sorry, I lost my. Dave DeVarty.
DeVarty here in Ann Arbor.
Chris Fraley.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Nicole Eisenman.
Here, Ann Arbor.
Todd Grant.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Elizabeth Nelson.
Here, dialing in from Ann Arbor.
Charlotte Wilson.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Julia Good.
Here in Ann Arbor.
All right, we have a quorum. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any questions or comments on the agenda? If not, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
DeVarty moves agenda approval.
Thank you, Dave. Support? Support from Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to approval of the minutes. We have minutes from the April 28th, 2021 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Are there any comments or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'd move.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have support?
Support.
Support from Charlotte. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, moving on to public hearings. We have petition ZBA 21-008 903 East Huron Street. John?
Okay, I'm John Barrett, zoning coordinator for the city of Ann Arbor. Petition ZBA 21-008, address 903 East Huron Street. Scott Clausen, representing the property owners, is requesting relief from section 5.32.2, alteration to a non-conforming structure. A bedroom, bathroom, and study area are proposed for the basement to expand the existing first floor unit in order to make a 6-bedroom rental apartment. The property is a non-conforming duplex and is zoned R4C multiple family dwelling. The subject property is located on the northeast corner at the intersection of East Huron Street and North Ingalls Street. The Rackham Graduate School is directly south and across the street. The home was built in 1858 and is within the old 4th Ward Historic District. The property is non-conforming as it does not meet the minimum lot size and lot width requirements of the R4C district. The owners are proposing a new bedroom, study, and bathroom to the basement that will convert the existing 4-bedroom first floor unit to a 6-bedroom unit. The upstairs is a 5-bedroom unit that will remain unchanged. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Mhm.
The first slide is the zoning map. You see the subject property highlighted in yellow in the center of your screen. And it's just at the corner of North Ingalls and East Huron. The next slide is the area map, and it shows existing conditions and surrounding neighborhoods. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial map of the subject property. You see it in its current state. The next slide is the survey that was submitted by the applicant with the application. The next slide shows a new first floor, and you see the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 bedrooms. And then the proposed new basement, which will provide a 6th bedroom, a study, and a bathroom to be connected to the first floor. The next slide is showing the 2nd floor and the existing 5-bedroom unit upstairs to remain unchanged. These are photos that were submitted by the applicant. You see the property from the west elevation looking from Ingalls, and a photo of the front elevation from East Huron Street, and then the eastern elevation of the property. Next slides are the photos that I took on my inspection. Again, you see the front elevation of the existing structure. This is the eastern side of the property, and this is the proposed access to that basement. This is the west side of the property and looking down Ingalls Street to the north, and you see the existing parking lot on the side of the house. The rear elevation of the home. The property directly abutting on North Ingalls Street. And that concludes my presentation, and I will take any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John? Chris?
Is there space for in a basement, they're gonna have to have the egress windows? Is there space for those and possible ballards so that they're not driving into those? What's the, I mean, it's kind of a subtlety for the ZBA, but I'm just interested in how they're gonna manage to do that.
So it's a good question, because this project went before the HDC, and those window wells were actually denied by the HDC. So they're going to have to supply the egress with that basement stairs, or the side stairs on that elevation that I showed, and they're going to have to provide light and ventilation that will be approved by the HDC.
If I remember correctly, it goes through the HDC first and then comes to us, right?
Correct, and they were denied initially, and they're going through another application process with the HDC, as far as I know. we'll have to ask the applicant what the status is with that.
Should we be viewing this then yet or not?
Well, yes, because I don't believe they actually have to have these window wells. Because they've got the egress on the side. That's what was preferred, was the window egress, but now they're gonna open up the side elevation there with the door. And
Okay,
the stairs down.
okay. Thank you.
Dave, go ahead.
They may not need egress windows, but I do know the housing code requires some sort of natural light in these bedrooms. So there will be windows. So if we grant this, it still has to meet code to get approval from the building department. And that would include HDC for the window wells.
The window, I think there's just gonna be windows.
Okay, and then it also needs approval before they can have occupancy in the rooms down there. It needs approval from the housing department because they do housing inspections for certificate of occupancy.
That's correct.
So I feel comfortable deciding on the merits of this, knowing that those other bodies will be considering those other issues when they move further along.
Any other questions for John? All right, if the applicant is ready, you may begin your presentation. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, great. I'm Scott Clausen. I'm the applicant on this project, and I'll try to answer a couple questions for you with regard to the windows. This was the original plan we were trying to get approved through the HDC. We've done situations like this before in the historic district, but more recently they have been not allowing us to enlarge the window wells on the outside. In this case, one of the members was right. All this still has to get approved by building and rental housing, so it'll all be to code. But in this case, the side door, which will have light on it, the floor plan is basically going to have to flip a little bit so that the bedroom has the exit directly to the outside, and that cover will be removed so that there's also natural light coming down that stairwell. I don't need to make any changes to the windows in order to have that area livable. And the idea is to get a bathroom, really just a bathroom and another bedroom down in the basement. We actually already have approval for 6 bedrooms on the first floor, and there is a plan that's been approved through the building department for that, but we would like, that only has 2 bathrooms. I'd like to get an extra bathroom and then obviously make one of the bedrooms, it would make the rooms a little bit more, would make 2 of the rooms bigger, more comfortable. This basement is in the front part of the house. You notice the back half of it's a crawl space. It's not a huge area, but it just makes it a 6-bedroom apartment. It'll have 3 bathrooms then instead of 2, and just a nicer living area. So if you have any questions for me.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? All right. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now. Once you've called in, please press *9 to raise your hand and staff will call on you.
Caller with the phone number ending with 432. You have 3 minutes to address the ZBA. You can press *6 to unmute your phone.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, hey, the only reason I was calling is I was trying to get the video link. I'm interested in E5. and I found the video link. Am I able to comment on E5 via video, or is it only by phone?
Public comments only by phone.
All right, I'll just stand by. I'll listen until we get the E5.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If there's anyone else who wishes to speak on this petition, please raise your hand. While we're waiting, I will note we did not receive any communications in the packet regarding this petition.
And I'm not seeing any raised hands, Chair Breer.
All right, thank you. With that, we are in discussion. Yeah, Julia.
This just looks like a regular non-conforming that there's not much grounds to disagree with. Unless I'm missing something, this is going to be a yes for me.
Any other discussion or perhaps a motion if everyone feels ready? Dave?
I'll just say my usual, I'm really concerned about on-site parking for these as we add bedrooms. But I know they have to comply with our very lenient requirements that attach the space requirements per unit as opposed to per occupant. But, and I know the code enforcement will make sure those requirements are met before they approve the occupancy. So with that comment, I will proceed to make a motion. ZBA 21008, 903 East Huron Street, alteration to a non-conforming structure. The Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants relief from section 5.32.2, alteration to a non-conforming structure to allow a bedroom, bathroom, and study area for the basement to expand the existing first floor unit to make 6-bedroom rental apartment. The new construction will not encroach any further into any of the required setbacks.
Thank you, Dave.
Second.
We have, oh, thank you, Todd. Mike?
Yes.
Charlotte?
Yes.
Dave?
DeVarty, yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
I also vote yes. The request is granted.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to petition ZBA 21-019-1108 Hill Street. John?
OX Studios, representing the property owners, is requesting relief from section 5.32.2, alteration to a non-conforming structure. The property is a 5-unit rental containing 8 bedrooms. The request is to reduce the number of units to 4 and to convert the basement into habitable space. The property is non-conforming for lot area, lot width, and the eastern side setback. The property is zoned R4C, multifamily residential. Subject property is located on the south side of Hill Street between East University and Church Street. The existing residence is a 3-story wood frame structure of approximately 4,661 square feet in size. The structure consists of 5 dwelling units and 8 total bedrooms. The basement is being used for laundry, storage, and mechanical equipment currently. The applicant is proposing to reconfigure the rental home from 5 units to 4 units while increasing the number of bedrooms from 8 to 20. The basement will contain 5 bedrooms, the first floor unit 6 bedrooms, the second floor unit 6 bedrooms, and the third floor 3 bedrooms. All existing windows will be replaced. New egress windows will be added to the basement unit. New fire escapes will be installed, and the exterior will be refreshed with new finishes. And Brad, I'm trying to start my screen share and it won't let me. It says my screen is paused. You're,
I'm seeing the PowerPoint.
okay. All right.
I don't know. Can you advance it?
So is it advancing?
No. Brett, you may have to give control over to John somehow.
I did.
Well, then 1 second.
Maybe you could paint a picture with your words.
Is that working now?
Yes.
Okay.
Electricity.
Sorry about the technical difficulty. The first slide is the zoning map. You see the highlighted property in yellow in the center of your screen. The second slide is the area map showing surrounding properties and existing conditions in surrounding neighborhoods. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo of the subject property on the south side of Hill Street. The next slide is the survey that was submitted with the application. You see that it does not meet on the eastern side, the setback, and that is the site plan is showing that right now. The 12-foot side setback doesn't meet the 60-foot lot width. It's only 57 feet wide and does not meet the lot area. The next slide is the existing conditions of the basement, crawl spaces, laundry, and mechanical rooms. The next slide shows the proposed basement floor plan with a 6-bedroom unit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 bedrooms. The next slide shows the first floor plan of the first floor unit with 6 bedrooms. Next slide shows the second floor unit with 6 bedrooms. And the third floor unit with 3 bedrooms. These next slides are the photos that I took of the property when I made my inspection. You see the front elevation of the property. Next slide shows the rear of the property and the parking lot. Next slide is the rear elevation of the home looking towards Hill Street. Next slide shows the driveway, the shared driveway between the subject property on the left and the neighboring property to the right. The next slide is the neighboring property to the east. And the next slide is the neighboring property to the west. I can take any questions at this time.
Thank you, John. Any questions for staff? All right, if the petitioner is ready, you may begin your presentation. You will have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Sarah Rouse. I'm an architect with OX Studio, representing Dennis and Chris Vessels, the owner and property manager. One clarification, the basement unit only has 5 bedrooms for a total of 20. The current owner has had it since 2006 and was actually the property manager of the property before that time period. The house is, looks like I lost the presentation. All right. The house is in desperate need of some structural renovations. The floors are sagging, the stairs are sagging. It needs some good work. And so in doing that, we are also going to be increasing the number of bedrooms, but decreasing the number of units. and basically making it fit more into the neighborhood of student housing that they are currently in. Right across the street, we have the university, so plenty of reason to add some more bedrooms. We will also, as John noted, be updating and refreshing the exterior, new egress windows, fixing the fire escapes, new materials to let it fit into the neighborhood a little bit better. And also adding bike parking for the increased occupants, hopefully using more bike transportation instead of cars, since they are so close to campus. So any questions for us?
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
I noticed that from the picture from the back, the third floor, the top floor doesn't seem to be as large as the rest of the building. Are you expanding that space or just making use of the space that's there with for the 3 bedrooms?
We're reconfiguring what we currently have to be 3 bedrooms. There's currently egress out the back. We are considering making that space sort of outside roof deck and then as well as fire escape. But we are not changing anything for the envelope of the house.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now. Once you've called in, please press *9 to raise your hand and staff will call on you.
A few moments here.
I will note while we wait that we did not receive any communication in our packet regarding this petition.
No indication of speakers.
All right, thank you. With that, we are in discussion. Mike.
Yeah, I mean, this one's pretty easy for me. This is like the heart of campus neighborhood, lots of density, you know, everything around here, students, all the adjacent property, the dorm across the street. So as long as they're following the city building codes on this, I don't have a problem with it. I'm going to be voting yes.
Comments, or are we ready for a motion?
I'll make
Sorry
a
to make, oh, no, go ahead, Dave.
And I'm happy to make a motion. Despite the fact this is right across the street from East Quad, I still think that as we significantly increase the number of bedrooms, it's a pipe dream to imagine that all these students are not going to have cars. And as much as thank you for providing bike parking. However, as a small landlord myself, I do know that students use cars to go places other than to class on campus or wherever they go on campus. So I will make a motion. I will vote in favor of this because it totally meets within our codes. ZBA 21-019, 1108 Hill Street, alteration to a non-conforming structure. The Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants relief from Section 532(2), alteration to a non-conforming structure to allow an existing 5-unit rental to reduce the number of units to 4 and to convert the existing basement into habitable space. The structure will not encroach any further into the setbacks.
Motion from Dave. Do we have support? Support from Chris. Thank you. Elizabeth.
Yes.
Julia.
Yes.
Chris.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Nicole.
Yes.
I also vote yes. Dave.
DeVarty, yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
Charlotte.
Yes.
The request is granted.
Great, thank you.
Moving on to petition ZBA 21-016, 2150 Freeze Avenue, I will note I have a conflict of interest on this petition, so I will be recusing myself. So I'll turn it over to Chris, and I'll see you back here on the next petition.
Good evening. I am Chris Fraley, Vice Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we are looking at ZBA 21-016, 2150 Freeze Avenue, and we will hear John's report.
Actually, we're gonna, staff member Chris Chang, senior planner. This is his site plan project, and he's going to present this case.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're fine.
Hey, I'm in. I am Chris Chang. I was a city planner that did the site plan for the addition for the St. Francis Church. I'm reading here, Brett, I need to, it says the host disabled the screen sharing. I'll tell you what, while we're working out the technical difficulties with trying to get the PowerPoint so I can screen share, I'll give you a little bit of background on the St. Francis proposal.
You should be all set now, Chris.
Okay, great. Let's do this. Scroll to the appropriate, there we go. St. Francis of Assisi Parish, the property owners are requesting a variance from installing the required electric vehicle parking spaces in existing parking lots fronting East Stadium Boulevard and Freeze Avenue. Section 5.19.1 requires a total of 91 EV parking spaces, and that's broken up by EV installed, which is 26 spaces, EV ready, which is 26 spaces, and EV capable, which is 39 spaces. The property is zoned R1B, which is single family residential district. The subject property is located on the south side of East Stadium Boulevard, west of St. Francis Drive. The church was built in the early 1960s with the subsequent additions since then. A site plan, special exception use, and variance from planting street trees were approved in 2021. The applicant is proposing to construct a two-story, 14,570 square foot parish structure on this 10.6 acre parcel for a new overall total floor area of 71,259 square feet. Site plans for city council approval trigger the need for the entire site to be brought into code compliance, and the EV parking ordinance was approved on January 19th, 2021, and the site plan was approved on February 16th, 2021. The applicant was aware of the EV ordinance and it was on a parallel approval track with their site plan. And I think everybody can see the screen. This is the zoning map. It is zoned R1B single family. It does have public land to the north, which is Tappan Middle School, and Winchell Park to the south, which is public land. But to the west is R1B, which is single family residential, and then mostly office uses and multifamily to the east. You can see from the aerial, from the description that I just gave, you can see Tappan Middle School to the north and Winchell Park to the south. And then you can see the multifamily residential on the east and the single family on the west. Here's kind of a blow up. I'll show you where the parish addition is going. But in particular on this slide, you really want to take note of the parking lots, because that's really what's being requested tonight from the Zoning Board of Appeals, is installing the 91 electric vehicle parking spaces. And those are going to be generally located, if you can see my cursor, up along the East Stadium parking lot and then off the Freeze parking lot in this area. And it's a little difficult, but the previous slide that I showed you, this is the actual site plan. These are the parking lots that will be impacted. They're a little bit bubbled, a little difficult to see, but this is where the proposed EV charging stations will be located. This is a photo looking To the north, this is the main office for the St. Francis Parish. This is the general area where the parish will be constructed. Yes, the trees will be removed and they have been mitigated for any landmark trees. Again, that's the same area. You're starting to look to the north, and that's out towards East Stadium Boulevard. There's a close-up of the parking lot, which was previously shown, and we can refer to where the EV parking stations are proposed on the site plan. Again, here's looking from East Stadium Boulevard. Now you're starting to look to the south. This is back towards Fries Avenue. Again, another view of the parking lot looking from East Stadium Boulevard more towards the neighborhood. And I'm open to any questions you may have.
Questions from staff. Todd? I'm sorry,
Yes.
from the board. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Todd.
Yes, Mr. Chang, Chris, hi. Hi again, nice to see you.
Seeing you.
Am I correct in assuming that if the site plan had been approved on January 19th, and then the EV ordinance was passed on February 16th, that we would not need to be addressing this?
If the order were reversed, that's correct. These are on parallel tracks, and it just happened that, yes, the EV ordinance was passed approximately 1 month earlier than when the site plan was approved by City Council.
Okay, so two more questions. So the material I have said the site plan was started in January of 2020. When was the EV ordinance first floated in City Hall, for lack of a better word? Was it before then? Has this been under thinking for a while, or is this pretty new?
I'm going to answer the first part of the question, and I think Brett or Mr. Leonard may be able to answer the second part. The first issue is they may have been meeting with city staff in January, but the official submission was in June. I believe it was in the staff report when it was actually submitted and routed for city staff review. So it was from June and then approved in February. I will defer to Mr. Leonard as approximately if he's got some dates of when the EV ordinance was starting to take form and starting to be heard by either the Ordinance Revisions Committee and approved by Planning Commission.
Okay, so actually I've just got two more questions, then I'm done. So my understanding of the EV sites is 26 are ready and plugged in right now. If they have to do this, 26 will be ready and plugged in and can be used immediately. But the other 26 and the other 39 would need additional work before they could juice up a vehicle.
That's correct. I mean,
Okay.
we'd have to. I added the definitions to the staff report. So you have the EVI, which is the installed. That's the 26. You would also have to do 10%, which are EV ready, which means if there's a demand for it, that it would be more that you've already put out the conduit and it's ready to be installed. And then you have the EV capable, which is just which is 39 spaces, which is a little less than the other one. So it would all depend on future demand.
Okay, so my last question, I think I've used up more than my legal number of questions. My last question is, was there any discussion between City Hall staff, yourself or otherwise, and the parish and the applicant perhaps agreeing to fewer than 91 spaces? I can ask that of the applicant, but if you don't know, I'll be asking that of the applicant. Would they agree to 40, for example, or was that not discussed at all?
We did not discuss because the ordinance requires that be the minimum number. And I would probably caution the ZBA on trying to negotiate what's required by code without a really unique set of circumstances to make that exception to code.
Yep. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Dave, you had a question, DeVarty?
So I guess I'll ask the petitioner, but what they're proposing has no electric vehicle capability.
At the moment, that's
Not
correct.
installed and not ready to be installed in the future with conduit and wiring out to locations. So they're proposing nothing, and they want full relief of all the requirements.
That is their request.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask them some questions.
Mr. Leonard, I believe you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I'm happy to address a couple of those questions that came up. The EV ordinance was started the prior year. So I don't know the specific date, but the EV ordinance was under development prior to this petition being submitted. We did endeavor, we had numerous, we recognized that was a potential change that could impact plans depending on when the approval cycle occurred. So we did endeavor to keep active petitions apprised of that progress, and that could be a consequence. And then I just want to make one small clarification. The three categories of EV spaces that are referred to, EV installed, those are spaces that have staged the minimum standard chargers installed, so they are absolutely ready to go. EV ready spaces are actually somewhat also ready to go. Those are spaces that have power run to them so that you can avail a vehicle to charge there, but they don't have the charging station, so it's literally sort of extension cord ready, but it has the potential obviously for quick installation of a charger. And then EV capable is that last category, which is trying to future-proof the parking lot for future EV potential. In that case, it might just be conduit that's run without the actual raceway of wire. So I just wanted to clarify those definitions as well.
Board Member Eisenman, I'm so sorry.
Are there going to be any changes to the parking lot in terms of quantity of spaces or other modifications? And is there any changes to the grade surrounding the parking lot?
No. And in fact, they got a landscape modification from doing bioretention since they weren't touching the parking lots as part of their site plan approval.
All right, if we do not have further questions, we will listen to the presentation from the petitioner. Gentlemen, please go ahead, announce yourselves and speak.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? My name is Robert Keene, and I am the business manager for St. Francis of Assisi Parish, speaking to you from Ann Arbor. We are a Roman Catholic community of nearly 3,000 families on East Stadium Boulevard and are in the final stages of preparation for breaking ground on our new 13,500 square foot parish ministry center on the west side of our church building. We have recently contracted Casco Incorporated to construct the building over the next 12 to 14 months. Tonight, we are here to respectfully request a variance from installing the 91 electric vehicle parking spaces required by the new ordinance due to several practical difficulties for the parish and due to the lack of public benefit to the public. Joining me from Hobbs & Black in Ann Arbor are our architects, Brian Bagnick and Dan Kohler, who are on hand to respond to any technical questions. Joining me from St. Francis is Tom Earhart, our project manager, who will provide the board with additional information to support our request. Thank you so much for giving your consideration to our variance request tonight.
Thank you very much, Rob. This is Tom Earhart. I am the project manager for this new ministry center. I might direct your attention to the supplemental narrative that we supplied when we submitted our application for the variance. And I'd just like to touch on some of the highlights there. This additional parish hall entails a kitchen office space to accommodate the demands for a school cafeteria and multi-purpose space while continuing to support our community services with additional meeting rooms. Parking lot configuration has not increased. In fact, it has decreased slightly. The usage is expected to remain the same with short-term parking during the weekend services and primary playground space during the school weekdays. The requirement for the electric vehicle stations will not deliver the anticipated result and be both non-effective and cost prohibitive for our nonprofit organization. By not increasing the parking spots, we don't believe that this ordinance should be applied to our facility. In addition, the dedicated private parking that we have in our lots is primarily short-term parking for worship services, K-8 parking for drop-off and pickup, limited teacher staff parking. We have K through 8 playground activities on the parking lot. And we do not intend, nor do we wish to have any overnight parking in our parking lot facilities. The average period of time a vehicle is on site is 1.3 hours per week per vehicle. Plus, we found out that once the infrastructure is in place, there is also a maintenance fee for each charging head that is anticipated to need to be paid on an annual basis. First year for the first 26 stations in charge proposed would be over $60,000 in maintenance fees on top of the infrastructure. We've already addressed the issue in regards to when the site plan was submitted. And we were appraised that there was an ordinance that was paralleling with, but the indication at that point in time was the first draft, which was substantially less vehicle charging stations would be required for our facilities in total. We have complied with all the other requests where at all feasible, including improvements to adding a water main loop extension, stormwater management enhancement, trash enclosure, landscaping, all being brought up to
30 more seconds.
The circumstances and the conditions associated with this variance request is not self-imposed. It is not going to aid anyone in the neighborhood, and we ask that consideration be given just to allowing us to be exempted from this requirement at this time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or any follow-ups.
The chair would like to ask a question if we can move into the question period here. Sir, how many staff do you have for the school?
Well, for the total parish staff,
And I'm sorry, can I interrupt you just for a quick second? I'm sorry. Could you step back just a little bit from your setup? Because it's extremely loud.
I see. Is that better?
A little bit. Thank you.
I'll downplay.
I can answer the question on the school staff. We have approximately 40 full-time teachers that teach during the school year. Mostly full, a couple part-time.
So there are people who are there throughout the workday, plus your support staff, et cetera.
Yes, that's correct.
And because I'm just thinking that as we move into the future, this is something that is not coming down the pike. It's here already. And I think electrification of parking facilities is going to be something very important in the very near future. What entity is proposing or charging the maintenance fee on the pedestals?
The manufacturer of the charging station.
So that's not a DTE fee.
No, it is not.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board? I'm not sure who is up first. Elizabeth Nelson, please.
Thank you. I actually had a question about the maintenance that you just referenced. I heard you say $60,000. Could you repeat again what that was describing? Its maintenance.
The cost of the manufacturer maintenance fee is $2,400 per station.
Per year?
Per year.
2,400. Is that, and now we're talking about the difference between stations that are fully functional and so.
This would be the fully functional station, the installed station that would be capable to immediately charge a vehicle
But some of what we're talking about is the number of stations that are just ready, that are, the line has been connected. There's effectively, like, the electricity is in proximity, but you've not built a station. Did you get a quotation for, or a quote for maintenance of the area, the spots that are simply ready as opposed to fully installed?
There would be no additional maintenance cost on those until fully installed heads would be placed. However, the total cost of this installation is over $250,000. Basic infrastructure before maintenance. I just don't see where we're going to get any type of realistic payback or benefit to the community or to, and in fact, it may cause a nuisance by bringing people into our parking lot to charge their vehicles when we really don't want them there at all.
So I have another question. You mentioned that you have 40 staff who presumably are there for a whole school day. How did you calculate the average, like 1 hour for the average visitor per week, or 1.5 hour?
All right. We took the total number of our parishioners that attend church services on site. The average church service is about 1 hour. It runs a few minutes before and a few minutes after for people to arrive and depart. We have several services each day, both multiple on Saturday and Sunday. We have church services Monday through Friday, where a much smaller number of parishioners attend. We have the teachers that are on staff, but not all of them are full-time. And we have some part-time personnel as well. So when we added up the total amount of time vehicles were on site for the week, divided by the number of those vehicles, that's where I came up with the 1.3 hours average.
When you were showing us the picture, you were saying that lot was primarily used for families, like parents dropping off and picking up. Do you then have a dedicated lot for the staffers, the 40 people who are, or do you?
Currently, we don't. Many of the teachers find it convenient to park along the street. Some park in that would be the larger parking lot on the north side of the school. We have some staff that park off of Freeze Avenue access because it's closer to walk back to the main office space. When the new office and building is in place, I suspect that our office staff and some teachers will primarily park off of the parking area near Freeze Avenue.
Thank you.
Mr. Grant.
Yes, following up on Elizabeth's question, I don't know whether Mr. Earhart or Mr. Keene would be for this. So I had figured a cost of $218,000 when I read my material, 2,400 by 91. But the clarification today is really the 2,400 ongoing cost at this point applies just to the 26 fully ready EV spaces. That's correct, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So that's $62,000 a year, roughly. So how much, if you had to do this, what is the cost figure for installing all 91 spaces? What additional project cost would be incurred by the parish if you have to do this?
I don't have that information available at this time.
Well, darn it, that would be important. But I bet obviously it's not going to be 2,400 per space because those EVR and EVC spaces will incur an ongoing charge. So, but there'll be some additional cost.
I would anticipate close to 150,000.
Okay, yeah, that okay, right.
Does that help?
Yep, and last, there's the school across the street. You know, alluded to people mooching off your electricity. Is it possible to shut the stuff off after hours so we don't have staff from the public schools sneaking across the road and, you know, charging
Nope.
their car?
Actually, that would be less of a concern. What we're more concerned about is just the general public pulling in for a charge. We're trying to control the environment to protect the children that we're entrusted with Monday through Friday. We're trying to maintain the facilities to provide spaces for our parishioners to come and worship at our church. And we also support the community with special projects that are not handled elsewhere. So it's a dual-edged sword. I mean, it's almost as if we're putting up a gas station on our parking lot, which is another argument for how do the teachers charge their vehicles? Normally, I would expect them to charge their vehicles at home, at their point of residence.
Right.
So,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
There are other questions? Mr. DeVarty.
So some slides ago, we saw the site plan. So the new construction where the parish building is going, and which is all totally new construction from the ground up. Everything's going to have to be installed, electrical and everything. How close is that to existing parking?
On the west lot, the south border of the west parking lot is going to be 6 to 8 feet away, or maybe 10 feet away from the face of the new building.
And how many parking spaces are in that lot?
I believe,
So if we just look at the nearby area.
45.
yeah, 40, I would, less than 50 is my thought.
The plan gives me what I'm looking at. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? And discussion? Mr. DeVarty?
So I keep talking about parking on both the first two sites and now on this one. As a member of the Board of Trustees at the community college, I've been pushing behind the scenes, but we are considering at the college investing in the DTE My Green Energy to promote energy development. And we have EV electrical site in our parking structure, and we're pushing to get more. It's large, you know, it is a public entity. The church or the parish is a nonprofit, but it's a non-governmental, somewhat public, non-governmental organization. These larger organizations and facilities are where we need to look for this kind of infrastructure investment to make electric vehicle usage easier for the public to take advantage of and to take on electric vehicles. We need charging sites. I'm going to vote against this. If I would encourage you to go back, if this fails, to come back and figure out a way you can give us something to meet a little bit of the need that's going to be growing in future years, not decades. And your staff, 40 people staff, is going to be able to take advantage of this, and it'll be a benefit to your own staff. So I encourage you to look positively. I know Hobbs and Black is a forward-thinking architectural firm with tremendous capabilities. I would love to see them work with you and come back with a proposal that asks for a variance, but gives something to the community and to your own staff to acknowledge that electric vehicles are coming. And they're here now, and they're coming fast and furious. I can't fight for this at the community college where I serve on the Board of Trustees and vote to give this variance to you when you've given us nothing in the way of acknowledging the fact that vehicle electrification is here now and will be coming fast and furious.
Ms. Good?
Chris, I was just wondering if there's any public comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am out of order. Let's see. Mr. Leonard, do we have anyone on board for comments?
Now that we've opened the public hearing, let's, anybody who wishes to comment on this proposed variance should press *9 on their phone to indicate that they would like to address the ZBA. Press *9 on your phone and staff will call upon you by the last three numbers, the last three digits of your phone number.
And please forgive me, this is my my virgin sale here, so I'm not doing really well.
You're doing just fine.
And everything covered. Just give it a moment. There is sometimes a delay. All written communication that has been received by staff has been forwarded to the ZBA. So John, I don't recall if anything specific was received on this particular variance.
We received no communication.
And
Okay.
no callers indicating a desire to speak.
Then moving on, do we have a motion? I'm sorry,
no.
did you have a question?
I did have a question. I just wanted to make sure there weren't any comments first. And this was a question of staff. Like, I'm not exactly sure what triggered this, because there is you have the comment in the report that normally it's when people ask for more parking spaces. But is this just a requirement that's triggered by any building permit for the EV parking?
So,
I can address that, Chris, if you want to weigh in as well. So I think what you're hearing, and you're hearing in some of the conversation here, is that this ordinance was a policy and code adopted by the city in order to try to advance this infrastructure in our community. And so as part of that, the code was adopted with a threshold that says whenever there is a site plan for city council approval, that's when this gets triggered. And the assumption on that is the larger site plans, larger investments are going to go to that level and might be more apt. That said, we definitely do have projects such as this one. I think it's it's not a unique example, but it is an example. We also have projects that might not be doing a lot of investment to their parking lot, but other aspects of that development elevate it to a site plan approval by the city council. And when that happens, that triggers the requirements of EV parking. So, so that's why in this circumstance, it's not that the actions that aren't happening with the parking lot are triggering the requirement. It is the other aspects, specifically the expansion of floor area on the site, that necessitates that level of review. And therefore we look at the site holistically.
Okay, that clears it up for me. I mean, I am leaning with what Dave's comments were. I am kind of concerned that when this was passed by city council, that they didn't think about things like nonprofits that might not be able to afford it. But that's kind of beyond our purview, I feel, here today.
Mr. Grant.
I think, Elizabeth, did you have your hand up first?
I think you should go first this time. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, well, you know, there are some things that troubled me about this particular petitioner and in general. One of my questions was, had the meeting dates been reversed, they wouldn't be under the gun to spend $156,000 roughly of initial costs and then $62,000 each year going forward. This is a nonprofit, and if they have to do this, this will help ensure that they're going to be a nonprofit. That's comment one. Comment two, this is not a public parking garage. That's different. The same thing with a public school or Briarwood. This is applicant's a little different because they have a parochial school, so they have staff on site during the day. But let's think about all the other churches in town where people don't park in the street, but they're used 2 hours each week. Realistically, nobody is going to fully charge their car during church service or synagogue service or the mosque up here on Plymouth Road. And this Procrustean bed of an ordinance forces nonprofits to burden themselves with the same costs that the Briarwood Mall does in every future parking garage. I think that's inequitable. And third, it's just the cost. Fourth, yes, electric cars are coming, but most are hybrid. There are very few Nissan Leafs. There are a small percent of the vehicles still, and it's nice to see the city getting out in front. But it's good to be 5 or 10 years in front. It's not good to be 15 years in front. So for all these reasons, I'm going to have to disagree with Mr. DeVarty, and I'm going to vote to give them an exemption on this.
Elizabeth Nelson, please.
I'm struggling with this, but I just because of a lot of the reasons that Julia mentioned, but I absolutely agree with Dave. And I would push back on a little bit of what Todd said, mostly because I did for a number of years, only recently did I, in the last couple of years, did I get rid of and not have my plug-in car anymore. I'm really struggling to conceive of, in the 6 years that I had a plug-in vehicle, I'm struggling to imagine the situation where somebody would use one of these charging stations just to sap power and like steal it from the church. I'm that scenario I am not imagining as a real one. What I am imagining as a very real prospect on the near horizon is the transition away from hybrids and to more dedicated battery vehicles. I mean, that's not so far into the future. I mean, it's true that like my vehicles were hybrid, which meant that I was less desperate for a charge. But I mean, this is really right around the corner. But it's bothering me a lot that I remember when this came on our agenda, and I was sort of going back in my records to remind myself. I'm struggling with this one because I do see the predicament that St. Francis is in, and I'm curious to hear from others. This does seem like a great expense, but at the same time, I do understand the importance of it. This is right around the corner. This is something that it's legitimately a need that we have identified, and we were right to prioritize it.
Thank you. Let's see. I'm sorry. Yes, McDaniel.
Yeah, thanks. So I think good points have been made by my fellow commissioners. And for me, the church is not like a business, right? In the sense of it can't just raise the cost of its product to generate revenue, right? It's not that type of business, but it's also not a necessarily private club either. It's this quasi thing that's sort of in the middle. And to me, I'm sympathetic about the added costs. That's a lot, but I'm kind of with Dave that there's got to be some compromise here, that between full compliance and no compliance. Electric vehicles, like several have said, including Elizabeth, they are increasing, and it's not 10 or 15 years. It's a year, 2 years, 3 years. I think as people's leases come up in their next vehicle choice, a lot more people are going to go that route. So I'm having a hard time with giving a full variance. I would be more comfortable if it was partial, and I'm not going to commit myself right now to say it's got to be 50% or 20%, but just some sign of good faith that there's an attempt to have some compliance with the new ordinance would make me feel more comfortable to vote for this.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Nicole Eisman.
Thanks. As someone who grew up going to a parochial school and played on the church playground, or our playground was a parking lot, I understand the concerns about safety for the students. But hearing the discussion today, I'm becoming more convinced about the electric vehicle parking need. And I don't know what I was going to say. Yeah, so I'll have to rethink here. Excuse me.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Mr. DeVarty. You're muted.
I want to respond to my fellow commissioner and respected commissioner, Mr. Grant. We have on our standards, one of the standards is the variance shall be the minimum variance necessary. And here they're asking for total forgiving of any need. They're building a new building of how many thousands of dollars right adjacent to part of the parking lot. It would be, and Hobbs and Black are creative architects, and whoever you bring in for electrical consultation, there's got to be a way to, at a reasonable cost, to give something to the community that will also meet the future needs of your own staff. And I see that as those users as the most likely users to make use of these charging stations, because they're on site for longer periods of time. So given that this is one of our standards for considering granting a variance, that it's the minimum variance necessary, I just can't say we'll give you everything, which is why I'm voting against it. If you had come in and asked for, told us your hardships and said, we're ready to do something, what we can, and gave something to the community and to our efforts to meet these needs of the future and electrifying our vehicles and addressing the climate change that's affecting us. It was 90 degrees the other day. Well, I guess that's weather, that's not climate. So anyway, that's my position. We have a standard here. The variance shall be the minimum variance that will make it possible or reasonable to make use of the land or structure. And I would, on using that standard, I could agree to some variance, just not a total forgiveness of any parking spaces, electric parking spaces.
Nicole, you're up, but I'd like to say something too.
I was just going to say, Todd, you're up next, but I want Nicole to finish.
Yeah, no,
Go ahead.
Nicole's up. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be quick. I just wanted to note that I think the infrastructure is very important to have in our community, and there was a recent Observer article about churches finding ways to monetize parking lots in the off hours. So they're, as electric vehicle parking infrastructure is progressing, there are other ways, technologies that are in place or developing that can help the church as well, potentially.
Yeah.
Mr. Grant.
Yeah, Dave, you always have intelligent things to say. If I'm ever going to disagree with you, I always think it through twice. That's what's troubling. Mr. Chang said, don't try to come up with some number between 0 and 91 and divide the baby, so to speak. He didn't say the term divide the baby, but it would be nice to see some. And your comment about a total approval so they don't have to do any electrical spaces is also a concern to me. And then on the other hand, of course, saddling them with a large initial upfront costs and then annual costs. perhaps the applicant would be better off pulling this and coming back with something that was not asking for an entire waiver, but a little bit more. Perhaps the way to do it would be to provide something that would accommodate the 40 full-time teachers and staff, but really not allow people who are there for 1.5 hours service to charge vehicles. But, you know, I'm troubled by the large cost, but I see your point as well, Dave. It would be nice if the applicant pulled this and came back and with a smaller waiver perhaps, but you know, I'm not the applicant.
Thank you. The chair would like to make 2 comments. One, I respectfully ask that we not confuse or conflate weather and climate. This is science, we know this. And I'm not pointing that at anyone, it's just a thing. And also I was probably reading some of the very same things that Nicole Eisenman was reading with regard to offering this as a public good that could defray the costs to a nonprofit. This is coming down the pike. There is no maybe, let's put this off 10 years. It's here now. And I do not think that this is a, something out in space somewhere. This is a reality that exists now. Myers has them in their spot. I realize they are not a nonprofit entity, but nonetheless, they are here and we need them. And I would press back against the notion that your parishioners won't get any benefit from this. If all the benefit they get is that there is a public good benefit in regards to moving in a way to solve climate crisis, I would look at that as a good outcome. The chair would like to finish those comments. Do we have any other? Mr. Keen, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to know, I took about 2 pages of notes, and I understand and I hear what everybody is saying. And I don't know the points of order here, but if what Mr. Grant said, we have the option to pull our request tonight, not have a vote, and allow us to come back to the ZBA and make a different presentation if that's allowable. I don't know the procedure for that, but given everything that's been said, we don't disagree with what's been said, and we'd like another opportunity to represent this case. If that's
I'm sorry, Mr. Cheng or Mr. Leonard, can you address what the options are?
Well, I might add that we have tabled things in the past and readdress them at a future meeting. I don't know if that would be an appropriate course. John, you've been here when we've done that.
Yeah, I would defer to Mr. Barrett on how the board typically prefers to approach such amendments.
At this point, I think if the applicant wants to either withdraw their application or table it, then I think that the request has to be submitted by the applicant right now, and then the board would have to vote on that. And then I wouldn't want to take any further discussion either. We need to end it right there. And so if that's the formal request, I think they should let us know, and then the board could take a vote on that.
Do we have Mr. Cheng, please?
I would also want to add that if action is taken, whether it's withdrawn or tabled, this is for the petitioners. I'll be seeking additional information with these costs of $62,000 and I believe $2,400 per charging station. I'd like updated information, maybe 3 or 4 bids, other companies, to see if there's any type of a lower threshold for cost. So I just want to add that in there. That's the type of information I'll be looking for, and I'll be in contact with you, I'm sure, if that's what happens. That's the decision that's undertaken.
Yeah, that can be communicated after this hearing.
Mr. Leonard.
Yeah, I would. I'll take that a step further. I can't speak for them, but our Office of Sustainability and Innovations has done a lot of great work on electrification and vehicle readiness. I will reach out to them if there's somebody on the petitioner's team who would be sort of open to that. I'd be happy if it would be of value. We could talk about the city's experience For example, I just during this meeting did a little research. The last time we purchased charging stations that I can tell, it looks like it was about $20,000 for 5 stations, and that included a 5-year maintenance for all of them of about $5,000, which is significantly less than the $2,400 per unit. But again, I'm not suggesting you might have different parameters and specifications that you're looking for as part of that. But I'd be willing to try to make that connection to see if we can share any lessons learned that we have from it. And then my last suggestion is, rather than tabling it, I would suggest that you consider a postponement. That way, anybody who might be listening would be fully aware of when this is going to reappear on your agenda. You can do either. Just from a process perspective, table is going to be, we're going to renotice it just like we would. You postpone it to a date certain, both petitioners, the public, and you as the commission understand exactly when it's going to back up.
Agreed. If that postponement is to occur, I can tell you right now that you would not be on the June agenda. The earliest agenda possible would be July.
Do I have a request from the petitioner to postpone?
Yes, you do.
Very good.
I would
Go ahead.
I move that we postpone this matter to our July meeting. And that notice go out with the July meeting that'll be on there. Okay.
Do I have support?
Second.
Thank
Support.
you. And is that the end of it at this point? I'm off script at this point.
No, at
Or
this
do we
point,
vote?
you would go around and ask each member what their vote is, yes or no, to support the
On the
postponement.
postponement. Very good. We are voting on a postponement for ZBA 21-016, 2150 Freeze Avenue to the July 2021 meeting. I will be asking for your vote. Candace Greer has recused herself. Mike Daniel.
Yes.
Dave DeVarty.
DeVarty, yes.
Chair votes yes. Nicole Eisenman.
Yes.
Todd Grant.
Yes.
Elizabeth Nelson.
Yes.
Charlotte Wilson.
Yes.
And Julia Good.
Yes.
We have a unanimous vote for postponement. Thank you for putting up with my sophomore attempt at chair. Candace, I believe you are back on, and we are moving on then to ZBA 21-018, 3010 Hickory Lane. Thank you. Or I can continue.
She's coming on.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And I'm back.
All
Thank
right.
you, Chris. Well done. As noted, yes, we are moving on to petition ZBA 21-018-3010 Hickory Lane. John?
Okay, I will also be taking this one. I
Oh,
was
Chris.
yep.
All
So
right.
I'm very familiar with the Ann Arbor Racquet Club. Let me just give a quick presentation. Brent Shoemaker, the Ann Arbor Racquet Club General Manager, is requesting action by the Zoning Board of Appeals to allow construction of a 240 square foot partially sunken spa in the northeast corner front setback. This will require a variance from Chapter 55, Section 5.17 of 24 feet from the front setback requirement of 40 feet. The parcel is zoned agricultural district, and is located in the southeast corner of Geddes Ave and Hickory Lane. The subject parcel is conforming for lot area. The required minimum lot area for ag is 100,000 square feet, and the subject parcel is 340,373 square feet. As part of the 1997 site plan approval of the pool expansion at this site, variances were approved to waive parking lot lighting requirements and to encroach 10 feet into the front setback to expand the pool. In 2015, a 7-foot variance request for a building expansion located in the 40-foot front setback off Huron Parkway entrance ramp was denied by the ZBA. So as you can see in the middle of the screen, the highlighted parcel, it is zoned agricultural. That is Getty's, that's to the north, and Hickory Lane to the west. As you can see from the aerial, you've got the golf course, Huron Hills Golf Course, and then you've got the residential to the west and the river to the north. Here's a close-up. I'll probably show a little bit more when we get to the actual site plan, but if you note where the pool is located, back in 1997, it was more of a cross shape of a pool, and they got a variance to carve out to actually square the pool off. So they did get a variance to extend the pool into the 40-foot setback. And this one will show it a little better. So I'm going to put my cursor on where the 40-foot setback line is, and you're going to follow it along where the Huron Parkway, the previous Huron Parkway entrance ramp is. Now it's just a pedestrian walkway. So you can see the pool got a variance, and they're going to be requesting a variance for the spa, and here is the spa. So again, it's kind of adjacent to the pedestrian walkway in Getty's, and it'll be requesting a 24-foot variance, front setback variance, but this one is more at grade than the previous variance request for the tennis building. Overall site plan, showing the whole site. Here are some views. This is the location of the spa. It's fairly well landscaped. Picture's not the best, but you can see that there's Getty's. This is from Getty's Road, and this is the location of the spa behind the berm again, looking at the view. Again, here's a pool. You're looking out towards Getty's. This was the section that got a variance for squaring it off. The spa will be in this area. A little bit more of a close-up. So looking again towards Getty's, you can see the landscaping, but the spa is going to be over where my cursor is kind of just circling. Same thing. This is the view if you're looking at from Huron Parkway. That's the bridge in the background, but the pedestrian walkway is kind of right behind it also. Again, this is kind of the general location. This is the pump house in the background, but the general location of where the spa is being proposed. Another picture looking in a different direction of the spa area. This is looking from Hickory Lane. That's the pump house that you see in the background, but it'll be behind that, so it won't be visible from a Hickory Lane. That concludes my presentation, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions? Todd?
Mr. Chang, so I'm familiar with this site too. So the old entrance to southbound Huron Parkway has been permanently abandoned. It seems to me it's now a walkway. If that didn't exist, it looks like, they would easily meet the 40-foot setback, right? If you were to ignore
These are still
that
public
space.
rights of way. They are bounded by 3 public rights of way. They have Getty's, that is still a public right of way. It was not vacated, and also Hickory Lane. So they do have 3 frontages.
Got it. Okay. All right. That answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions for Chris? All right, if the petitioner is ready, you may begin your presentation. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. Am I coming through?
Yep.
Okay, great. Nice to see you guys this evening. Just in quick summary, let me just explain what's going on here as a backstory. The Ann Arbor Racquet Club is making some maintenance and amenities related upgrades to their facility. Most notably, this was driven by the fact that they have one of the largest public pools in the state of Michigan, and they are making some significant upgrades to their pumping system, filtration system, the way they sanitize the pool. Along with that, they are removing their discharge to the sanitary sewer, which was commonplace back when the pool was originally designed and built. Now, dechlorination is the standard for pools in Ann Arbor, and then discharge into storm sewer, which is going to eliminate 600 gallons per minute of peak discharge into the city of Ann Arbor's sanitary sewer, which is a significant event. If any of you are familiar with the sanitary sewer mitigation program. So along with that, like the pump house is going to be rebuilt, slightly relocated to accommodate the new equipment and the updates. Chris is showing it there. Along with that, they are improving, we're filing a site plan for administrative amendment to include dumpster enclosure improvements, as well as some non-zoning regulated items such as patio seating, diving boards, a general spruce up of the whole like deck area of the club. Along with that, they'd like to add a spa that is going to be used, a spa hot tub, which is going to be used for both general use and a heated pool for awaiting divers. The club has a club team that does swimming and diving. They compete against local club teams. And I'm not a swimmer, but apparently it's commonplace for those athletes while they wait, they prefer to wait in a warm spa, which why wouldn't we all? I get that. I've never done it before, but it makes sense because the boards are at the north end of the pool patio. It makes sense that that's where the spa be located. Besides that, like the other decking around the pool is very narrow. They require a certain amount of passage lanes for like chaise lounges and then like patron passage. At the south end, there is more patio down there, but that's generally occupied by parents that are watching their children in the kiddie pool that's at the south end. So within the confines of the current space, this makes most sense from a functionality standpoint, as well as just like what they have to work with. We feel this is not an unreasonable request for several good reasons. As Chris alluded, this property is bounded by 3 front yard setbacks, and one of them isn't really like a real true front yard setback. I mean, it used to be a road, now it's just a pedestrian pathway, but because the right-of-way has not been abandoned, the same 40-foot setback still applies to the pedestrian pathway that it would if it was a bona fide. It used to be an entry ramp. I'm sure most of you remember how you would enter like here on Parkway southbound, much like you would like a small entrance ramp from an expressway. I did a little research. This use in the Unified Development Code is defined as outdoor recreation. If we were to propose this use in a new site right now, this type of use is allowed in the C2B district, the C3 district, and the PL, Public Land District. The front yard setbacks in those districts, because this is still agriculturally zoned, which is an anomaly in Ann Arbor in and of itself. The setbacks in those 3 zoning districts are 10 feet, 10 feet, and 0 feet. And because this is agricultural, it's set at 40 feet. So it's an additional element that kind of hamstrings the property. So I just wanted to make that apparent. Additionally, in my mind, I find that the situation requiring a variance is somewhat questionable. The Unified Development Code defines required setback as the minimum or maximum distance specified by this chapter that shall be provided between a lot line and a structure. We're not talking about a structure per se. We're talking about a half subterranean feature. It has walls on the side that are 18 inches high. It goes down about 2.5 feet below that. I could have a retaining wall in my front yard that's 18 inches high, made of concrete, and it wouldn't require a variance. And I know for a fact I can have a rain garden in my front yard that is like 2 feet deep and has 18-inch high boulder walls around it. And so I think that you get to this point where you try to deal with a gray area. This is not a black and white issue. So I want to just point that out, that it's not, we're not building a shed up against the property line. Also, I think another noteworthy point here is that the club is currently using this space for aquatic recreation. We're really not expanding the patio by that much, a couple of feet. There's currently people actively participating in this space. Now, whether they're participating by being in a hot tub spa, or they're participating by standing around or playing tag, well, like, tag's bad. I forgot around pools. I forgot that. But whatever they're doing, they're using this space right now. We're really not like pushing out the usable space. We're just changing the functionality of it at this point. And biggest part about it is you can't see it. It's totally invisible from all sides. It's hid by berms and landscaping. So I think it's important to note that one of the reasons that setbacks are in place is to prevent encroachments that may be detrimental to nearby residents or otherwise adversely affect neighboring property values or quality of life. At the end of the day, the fact that this is not visible from the outside of the property and it has no impact on anyone's quality of life is, I think, a very key point here. I believe this variance would still uphold the intent of the zoning ordinance, and we ask for your consideration in this matter and are here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions for the petitioner? Todd?
Mr. Betzel, just to clarify, so you said this space is currently being used. In my thinking, does that mean that this proposed spa would go where there's currently cement? It'd just be, for a poor description, putting a hole in the cement and filling it with hot water? You would not be expanding the cement. Am I correct about that?
Commissioner Grant, you are correct. The geometry is changing a little bit, and that we're rounding a couple of the rectangular angles, but there is no significant change in the occupational limits of the existing patio versus the proposed patio.
Chris?
What did you say the hookup was it storm drain or sewer?
We're removing the hookup from the sanitary sewer.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
And applying dechlorination devices and going to the storm sewer.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dave?
Well, I'm going to save for comment my support for this, but just a question for the petitioner. Why not just get a zoning change on this so you don't have these setbacks that are required of the agricultural zoning? Because agricultural zoning in this part of the city is a remnant of history.
Well, Commissioner, I really haven't delved into that. I guess I can, based on my own experience with working in the city of Ann Arbor, a rezoning would require citizens participation meeting, public hearings, planning commission, city council, and you know what that all entails.
Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth?
When you were talking about unhooking from the stormwater system and the new pump house, and I think we were looking at the northwest corner where that new structure was going to go, or is that right? Is that sort of in the upper left? Is where
that's correct. We would be disconnecting from the sanitary sewer system for the pool discharge, and we'd be employing a dechlorination system that would dechlorinate water from the pool and the backwash to then be discharged into the storm sewer that alleviates the peak problems associated with the discharge into the sanitary sewer. It's the whole concept behind the sanitary mitigation program, or what people used to know as a footing drain disconnect program as well.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm looking at in this map here, and I appreciate whoever put this slide up, is it both that pumping facility and the new spa pool these are the two things that are in violation of the setback? Or is it just the spa pool?
Just the spa pool. The pump house, an actual building, proper building is not in violation of the setback. We're not asking for a variance for that. It's just what's partially subterranean. It has an 18-inch wall around it. We've all seen hot tub spas, right? I mean, this is like a built-in one, not a fiberglass one that's delivered to your home or deck. This is partially submerged and partially above the deck of the pool.
I guess my only other question, and this is maybe just curiosity, because I've never, I think I've biked past this place. I've never been in it. What am I looking at that, because I'm also looking at satellite. What am I looking at that's the two circles that are connected that are just south, like sort of on the southeast corner below the pool? What is
That's the kiddie pool.
Oh, okay. All right. I was trying to figure it out. I was like, is that like a hot tub? What is, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now and press *9 to raise your hand. Once your hand has been raised, you'll be called on by staff. I will note we did not have any written communication in our packet regarding this petition.
Few moments here. No indication of speakers.
Thank you. We are in discussion. Dave.
For me, this is an easy one to approve. There's not a structure. It's just an in-ground spa with a little bit of maybe a 18-inch sidewall or something. It's invisible from anybody outside the site. I see no negative impacts anywhere for this, and it'll be an easy one for me to vote for.
I'll just briefly note, I agree. There's also a lot of unique qualities about this site. The fact that it's still zoned agricultural, that the road right-of-way frontage that the request for the variance is being granted from is no longer a road, but a pedestrian pathway. The fact that it's not visible, as Dave noted, and there's not any negative impacts to surrounding property owners. I think this makes it an easy one for me as well. Julia, did you have a comment as well?
Yeah, I guess this is for Chris. I'm not sure how the setback works, if it was a building, but is there like a height when it triggers the setback? Like if this was flush with the ground, would they need a variance?
I contend that it would. While we were discussing, I looked up the definition of what a structure is in our code. And I'll read the definition. Structure, a combination of materials to form a construction for use, occupancy, or ornamentation, whether installed on, above, or below the surface of land or water. So it is a structure by the city's definition, but again, I would contend that it's 18 inches above grade.
Okay, I was just more curious. I'm leaning yes on this also.
Todd, did you have a comment?
I did, thank you. The only trouble, I thought Mr. Betzold was articulate about the reasons why we should treat this a little differently than a normal one. I was a little troubled that the setbacks in other areas were 10 feet or less than here because cows could wander around along the premises, that they're required to be 40 feet from a road, in particular an abandoned road in part. The only hesitancy I have is that this is clearly a variance that's not going to affect their minimum use of the property. They can still go swimming without hot water. But that said, I do agree with my fellow members, and I'm going to vote to give them the variance.
Chris?
Hi, thank you. I was also impressed with, the case, the anachronistic zoning and the 3 front setbacks, one of which is questionable because it's not really a street setback anymore. Seems like in the balance that they are disconnecting a significant source from the storm, I'm sorry, correct myself here, from the sanitary sewer. That's a really good trade-off that I think supports this, and I will be voting for it. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion or are we ready for a motion? Dave?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Dave.
Or
Okay, ZBA 21-018, 3010 Hickory Lane variance. Based on the following findings and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variance from Chapter 55 Unified Development Code, Table 5.17-1, Single Family Residential District Dimensions. A 24-foot variance to allow a 9-foot by 24-foot hot tub spa in the front setback at the southwest intersection of Geddes Road and South Huron Parkway. 1, there is a practical difficulty that is exceptional and peculiar to the property and results from conditions that do not exist generally throughout the city. And 2, allowing the variance will result in substantial justice being done, considering the public benefits of the zoning ordinance, the practical difficulties that will be suffered by a failure to grant the variance, and the rights of others whose property would be affected by allowing the variance.
We have a motion. Do we have support?
Support.
Thank you, Charlotte. Nicole?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Dave?
DeVarty, yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Chris?
yes,
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Charlotte?
Yes.
The request is granted.
Thank you. Candace, is my mic still hot?
Yes.
I'd like to thank the commissioners this evening. I'd like to thank Chris for his help. And I'd like to thank John, who threw me a last minute link because I was having a Zoom attack, like trying to get in at the last minute. Take care. Everyone have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. Moving on to petition ZBA 21-017, 3389 Plymouth Road.
Candace, I'd like to propose a 5-minute break. We've been going about 2 hours before we get into this Plymouth Road one. I think we're going to be on this one for a while.
Okay,
I'd
fair
support.
enough. Yes. All right. We are on break until 7:55.
Thank you.
If everyone's ready, we will proceed with petition ZBA 21-017 3389 Plymouth Road.
Candace, before we get started, I just received a message from Nicole Eisenman, and she's unable to return after the break.
Okay, thank you, John.
So you're welcome. We're down to 8 members now.
Yes.
Jeff Kahn, Senior Planner, will be presenting the beginning of this appeal.
Jeff, you there?
I am. All set?
Yep, go for it.
I wanted to start off just by giving everyone a little bit of a background to this story. Plymouth Green Crossings PUD was approved in 2006 as a mixed-use development project that included residential, retail, and bank uses. Proposed PUDs and amendments to the PUD supplemental regulations must be approved by City Council. The owner of the PUD is Plymouth Green Crossings LLC, a property of Grand Sakwa Properties LLC. The owner of the Fifth Third Bank building, which is called Building D, at 3389 Plymouth Road, is Fifth Third Bank. Building D is a condominium unit within the Plymouth Green Crossings LLC PUD. The petitioner is appealing an administrative decision by city planning staff regarding the petitioner's ability to request rezoning without obtaining the permission of all property owners of the PUD in order to seek modification of the PUD regulations to allow a veterinary clinic within Building D of the Plymouth Green Crossings PUD. I believe John has about 3 slides to show. Just to remind you all where the site is. It's at the northwest corner of Plymouth and Green Roads in Ann Arbor's northeast side.
So the first slide is the zoning map. You can see the highlighted subject parcel at the center. It's just on the north side of Plymouth Road. The next slide is the aerial map showing existing conditions and surrounding neighborhoods. And the next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo of the existing financial building. This is the survey that was submitted with the application. This is the site plan that was submitted with the application. The subject building or property is right here, Building D. The hashed site, you can see it right here. And the photos of the existing property. The rear of the property looking down towards Plymouth. And this is the entrance to the site. The Building D is to the west. Jeff, do you have anything else to add? Or Brett?
No, that's all I had, John. Thanks very much.
Brett, yes.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to add a couple of contexts. So as part of this petition, you received a lot of information from the petitioner, citing some court cases, and you've heard some. I think we've received some additional correspondence subsequent to the petitioner as well. I just want to do my best to focus in on the question at hand and just really emphasize that. To be clear, this is not an appeal of a zoning decision. That wouldn't be appropriate for the Zoning Board of Appeals to take. Any appeal of a city zoning action would be to circuit court after the city council made such a decision. In this case, the question is our interpretation and application of a provision of our ordinance that says when you have a planned unit development, such as this one that's been developed comprehensively, The requirement to seek modifications to that zoning requires the permission of all property owners of that planned unit development. So that is the question being posed. That is the question being posed to the ZBA, whether or not the city staff's determination in that regard of the code is appropriate and faithful to that code. I do want to also note that because from staff's perspective, we think our perspective is that the code is pretty clear. However, if there is a desire for any specific research or advice from the city attorney, we would be, of course, happy to relay any questions and provide any follow-up information to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Generally, my understanding is much of the case law that was cited in the petition does relate to the power of cities to zone properties and how zoning can occur. We certainly don't dispute that the city has the power to rezone property. We don't dispute that property owners can seek the opportunity to rezone their properties as well. But in the case of planned unit developments, the city's ordinance prescribes how that application must be made. And so that is the question of this appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I'm happy to answer any questions as well, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Brett. Any questions for staff? Chris? Chris, you're still muted.
I thought I unmuted. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I'm on another computer screen looking at Zoning Board of Appeals. And it says to hear and decide appeals and to authorize variances from the strict application of the zoning, off-street parking, landscape, streets, stormwater, and fence ordinances. And I read through everything, and it seems like to me that even though the explanation of why we're seeing this, it doesn't approach that really. I mean, it seems like almost as though the PUD precludes us from looking at this because they don't have the permission that they need from the rest of the owners. So if the PUD zoning rules of zoning for PUD require that and they don't have it, why are they in front of us right now? So I need just some clarification, and maybe I'm oversimplifying, but that seems a question in my mind.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and my apologies. Obviously, we didn't do a very good job conveying sort of the nature of that question. So under the UDC, there is a general.
You guys do great work.
Well,
no apologies necessary.
Well, John and Jeff and Chris too. So under the UDC, appeals can be commenced by somebody aggrieved by a decision, filing a notice of appeal from the official who made that decision to the ZBA. In that case, they're essentially appealing a decision that I and my team have made, which is to say that we cannot accept a rezoning application from that site without all of the property owners' permission. So that is what they are appealing. I appreciate what you're saying. I think you're totally right. If it was a contesting action on the plan unit development, it wouldn't be an appropriate forum. To that end, I honestly, I think that I of course think that our reading of the language in the UDC is accurate and appropriate. Nonetheless, that does not prohibit somebody from taking a counter position and appealing that to the ZBA that somehow me and my team are inappropriately interpreting that language. So
Sure,
does that help at all?
Yes, thank you.
I would like to add that this is all covered under section 5.27.4, powers and administrative review of the Zoning Board of Appeals, which states that the Zoning Board of Appeals has the following specific powers: to hear, decide appeals from any review, any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination made by an administrative official or body charged with enforcement of the zoning ordinance in this chapter. So I believe that you do have the authority to hear this appeal this evening.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead.
Me or?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I don't know whether this is for Mr. Leonard or my question simply is, it appears from the documents that I read that Fifth Third Bank was present during the formulation of this PUD back in 2006, and that the building was built specifically for them to occupy. Or saying in more plain English, they were there at the beginning of the formulation of the PUD. Is that a correct statement?
That's our understanding, correct?
Dave, go ahead.
A question about, I understand we have the power to hear this appeal, and this is a right that the appellant has. An aggrieved appellant can bring an appeal of a decision they feel is wrong by a staff person or the staff. If we affirm the staff's position and deny the appeal, then they want to pursue a further action? What's their next step? Do they go to court? Do they go to city council? What is the process that they have that they can pursue to make sure that they have all their rights met?
Probably a better question to the attorney, but I think ultimately it would be a court action that somehow the city's ordinances were not appropriate. And so they would be filing action that the city's, in this case, the city's requirements placed on submitting a PUD petition were inappropriate or somehow illegal based on law, in case law and legislative provision by the state.
So there's no further administrative appeal available to them?
Correct.
Judicial remedy. Okay, thank you.
And in fact, this might be a desire for them to sort of foreclose all local avenues before they take that step.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? Yeah, Julia.
This is kind of the other side of that. I think this is the first PUD that's come up since I've been on the board. If staff had accepted the application for rezoning, you would have just made a packet, which then would have went to the city council to make the decision on. Is that how it works? Okay.
Right.
And, can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
So we have a communication from a lawyer and somebody who is one of the other owners, whose permission is that the city says is needed. If we had decided in favor of Fifth Third Bank, could that person have filed an appeal to the ZBA that your administrative decision was wrong? And then we'd have to hear it anyway?
I suppose that's possible.
Okay.
Even though they're not the petitioner.
Going pretty
Right.
deep.
I understand that.
Any other questions for staff? All right, if the petitioner's read, oh, sorry, go ahead.
All
Someone
right,
have
I'm just processing here. This is fairly complex. So the question isn't rezoning, the question is redefining the rules of the PUD. Is that not what we're looking at? Help me clarify there.
I would respond to that you're largely correct, but I wouldn't call it as redefining the rules. It is, the purpose of this mechanism is that I, as the planning manager, could err as a human in appropriately interpreting the code that guides our work. And so this provides, certainly I don't think that we have done so, and that is, but this is the process that affords a petitioner to say, thank you very much, Mr. Leonard, but I respectfully disagree. I would like to air that interpretation dispute with the Zoning Board of Appeals. That brings it here. So it's not quite that you would, while it could have that effect, if you were to approve it, we would certainly hear from the Zoning Board of Appeals, oh, we need to reconsider how we've been interpreting this provision of the code. But it wouldn't truly be rewriting any provision of code.
I just want to state that I want to support our staff's decision. I think you've appropriately looked at this.
Maybe we should hear from the petitioner first.
Yes. Are there any other questions for staff? All right. If the petitioner is ready, you may begin your presentation. You'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you. James Brynsma here. I'm joining you from my offices in Grand Rapids tonight, and I appreciate your time at this late hour. And I certainly appreciate the effort of the staff. We're not here because we're in some kind of a row with the staff, but there's questions that come up. And the reason you have a lawyer in front of you and not an architect or an engineer is because we're dealing with what does the ordinance mean and how can you amend a PUD once you're in a PUD? And so the ordinance speaks to that, and we think it speaks to it in a way that says our client, Fifth Third, is in a position to ask, just ask. You're not deciding whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, just to ask for a rezoning. And let me point you to the specific section that I'm going to be relying on for that. And it's in the Unified Development Code at 530.5. And it talks about changes to a PUD zoning district. And it says you can do them in one of two ways. You can either follow the rules for a PUD, or you can follow the rules for a regular rezoning under section 5.29.10. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're saying we want to follow the rules for a regular rezoning rather than ones for a PUD. So I'll get into that in a minute, but let me just back up and talk about the property a second. So this is uniquely perhaps zoned for one use and one use only, and that's as a financial institution with a drive-through. And yes, it's been that way from the beginning, and Fifth Third walked right into this when they bought the property and knew that it was zoned for a financial institution. So nobody's saying, you know, oh, we had no idea what we're getting ourselves into. But we're also getting into a world in which rezoning and relief from zoning is part of the backdrop. And so we didn't give up the right, if the world changes, to ask for changes in the zoning. And that's where we are now. Because when the bank was opened in 2007, it's a very different world than it is today. Back in 2007, not everybody carried what was effectively their own retail branch in their pocket on their cell phone. But that's the world we're in now. And so the need for retail banking sites has changed. And the reason this banking site closed is because it's not needed and it doesn't serve your constituents. It doesn't serve the community. Now, the property was decommissioned as a bank in 2018. It's been on the market since then, 2.5 years, and there's no other bank or financial institution that's ponied up and said, we want to buy it. But the people that have showed up are the people who are not going online, the uses that do serve your community. We've had dentist office inquire, and now we have a contract with someone who wants to use it as a veterinarian clinic. And that is exactly the kind of use that the community needs, and it provides a valuable service. But we can't do that. We can't do it here. And why not? Because the property zoning says you can't. Now, that's what brought us to the city to say, look, we'd like to try and get the property rezoned. But we didn't come there first. First, we went to our neighbor and said, look, if we want to amend the PUD, will you go along? Will you give your approval so that we can change the use to something that makes more sense? And we could not get that approval. And one of the very important things to keep in mind as you're looking at this is that our other PUD owners don't owe us the same obligations that a public institution does. They don't have to be fair. They don't have to be rational. They don't have to give us reasons for why they say no. They can just say no. And so what effectively the interpretation has done is it's given the other property owner a veto. And basically they have stepped into your role and said, we're not going to allow any rezoning. We don't have to, and we don't have to tell you why. And so that's where we were stuck in place. And so that's why we came to the staff and we said, look, we'd like to apply for a rezoning. Just ask. And we were told, no, you have to have consent of the other property owner. And that's where we diverge. So let's talk just a little bit, and I'll try to fit it in my 5 minutes, that we have a separate parcel of property. It has a separate tax ID number, and it is a separate conveyable unit of real estate under Michigan law. And so even though it's in a PUD district, it is still a separate ownership and separate piece of property. And it's no different than if I'm in a residential district and I want to ask for you to rezone my property to commercial. I don't have to have everybody else in the residential district say, well, I'll go along. You can ask for your property to be rezoned under the law. And that's what we've asked to do. So now I'm going to go back to the ordinance and the specific language. Section 5.30.5 says that there are 2 ways to amend a PUD. One is to follow the usual rules for a PUD. The other is to follow the usual rules for a zoning ordinance amendment. And the usual rules for a zoning ordinance amendment under 529.10, and that's under B3, says an application by a property owner initiates the process for rezoning. We're not asking to rezone anybody else's property. We're not saying get rid of anything to do with the PUD for anyone else. We're just saying as to our separate piece of property, we are not married in eternity to everyone else around us. We can ask for a rezoning as to that land. And I don't believe that the ordinance ever intended to lock everyone in place forever in perpetuity when there's a PUD, because your ordinance treats PUDs as a zoning classification, which is a legislative decision. And so there is discretion in the city at all times to amend its zoning ordinance and to change its legislative determinations as to property. Now, if this were a special use or some other administrative decision, that might be different. But the way that the city operates its PUDs and makes them a legislative decision gives us the right to ask the city to change its mind. And that's all we're asking you to do, is to recognize that under the plain language of the ordinance, Fifth Third has and enjoys the right to go to the process and ask for a rezoning. And if our other property owners don't like it and they think it's a bad idea, they're going to show up and they're going to oppose the rezoning, and they're going to say the city shouldn't do it. And they'll have a full and fair opportunity to participate. Nothing is being cut off. But what we're saying is we ought to at least get off the ground and be able to ask and put this question to the city so that they can decide whether a change needs to be made. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions, but those are the things that I wanted to emphasize as you're making your consideration.
Thank you. Questions? Todd?
Mr. Breisma, three questions. My understanding from looking at all the documents, the attorney letters back and forth and so on, and looking, not going online, but looking at the excerpts of the amended master's deed and the documents you gave me, that Fifth Third Bank was present at the formation of the PUD. That's correct, isn't it?
That's my understanding, and also when it was amended.
Okay, but they were essentially a party to this going in, and as you alluded to, they went in with their eyes fully open.
Yes.
Okay. Number two, the only documents we've seen from their attorney, Mr. Shekti, I believe, is that they're objecting to the use of the property as a vet clinic because of the food establishments across the way. I'm quite familiar with this. My wife and I have eaten at Sweetwater's and Umi Sushi, and I've always thought this development was 3 sizes too small. This Fifth Third Bank was put in there like Cinderella's stepsisters in her little glass sipper. It's really annoying getting in and out of there, but anyway, be that as it may. So they're objecting to animals right across this very little parking lot. You don't have any evidence that they've objected to all other possible uses of the property. You in fact had a hot buyer and you asked the other owner and they said, no way in hell do we want a vet clinic. That's what happened, isn't it?
No, that's not actually what happened. So this has been
what other uses have they rejected?
Well, there was a dental office that was being under consideration, and that was rejected. And then we've been flat out told that any amendment of the PUD is rejected. And so
Do you have a written documentation of that saying they've rejected all other uses except a financial institution?
I don't have that tonight, but I will say that the request for rezoning is not to rezone it as a vet clinic. That has to be independently reviewed and approved. The request for rezoning would be for a district that would allow a vet clinic, but it would allow other uses. So there's going to be an opportunity to vet any particular use that someone might want to say, or they might say, look, that zoning classification is improper because it allows for a veterinarian clinic. They can raise those objections. I'm not saying that they're cut off from those objections. What I'm saying is that the opportunity even to ask for rezoning has been denied by the city, irrespective of anything else.
Third and last question. Are you arguing that in fact what you have is a governmental taking here?
Well, I'm arguing that there could be a point at which all economically viable use of the land is taken away. So yes, there would be a taking. I'm not saying we're there yet.
Thank you.
Dave, go ahead.
If we do on this appeal side with the petitioner and grant your petition, then the rezoning process, just remind me, if one of the staff wants to, would proceed by the applicant asking for a rezoning and it proceeding through the planning commission with public hearings. And then the final decision would be by city council. And my recollection from when I was on city council is rezonings had to be voted on at 2 readings at city council. Is that still the case?
That's still the case.
So there is, if we grant this appeal, there's an extended process by which the appellant can go through to try to pursue to have a usable economic use of this property. So there are, as the appellant is saying, there are opportunities for all sides to be heard and for decision-making bodies much more sophisticated than us volunteers on the ZBA. It'll be the volunteers on the city council or the volunteers on the planning commission or both. I see your argument that what we're looking at is to grant the appellant due process. Is that not what you're asking for?
Absolutely. I want an opportunity to be heard at a meaningful time, and I'm just not being allowed to be heard, as to that request.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Chris?
Yeah, before we heard from the petitioner, I inappropriately said that I support the staff. I do support the staff. I think they do very good work. But when I hear the petitioner say, look, it's a piece of property and we want to be able to do something with it, and that ability is precluded somewhat, maybe capriciously, by another landowner adjacent, but still within the PUD, I believe that the petitioner should have that opportunity. Like you said, the ground rules have changed quite significantly since 2006, and that wasn't something that I had considered. I don't know that I would be a real happy camper if somebody told me, oh, you can't do anything with that without any kind of legal process. So I do support the staff, very much so. But I think the petitioner has a very good case here for the opportunity on the flip side of the consideration, because both opportunities are there. They've gone through one, now they want to try the other one. And I think that's fair game. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Questions for the petitioner? We're kind of touching into a discussion territory, which is great, but I want to make sure there's not any other questions for the petitioner before we get into discussion. So Elizabeth, did you have a question?
This question I might have to direct to staff as well later, but I'm curious. I need a little bit of history about why this was a PUD in the first place. What were the concessions that were made? What were the exceptions? I guess I'm trying to understand. Maybe the petitioner can explain to me why this happened to be a PUD.
To be honest with you, and I'm not going to try and answer a question I can't, I don't have the particular history of why the original applicant decided to do it as a PUD. I know Fifth Third came into it, but they were not the driving force behind it. So I defer to the staff's knowledge of the history on that particular point.
I can speak to that. The site was previously zoned manufacturing M1. I believe M1 or research. In either case, a mixed-use development project was not allowed under those zoning districts. Additionally, the master plan at the time, when it was originally conceived, didn't anticipate a mixed-use development project. So the petitioner came in with a mixed-use concept, also agreed to provide affordable housing. That was a requirement to get the mixed-use component. And so they decided that a PUD would be maybe the most successful path in getting city council approval at that time.
Okay, thank you.
When I said affordable housing, I meant to say they made a contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Chris, did you have another question?
I just wanted to offer some perspective because I read what the other PUD owners had said would be the issue at hand. If we're looking at the site, the ATM or the Fifth Third Bank is physically a separate structure. And if we move not a half a mile down the street, there is Arbor Hills Animal Clinic and Rapport, specifically within the same building on the opposite side of a petition wall in a commercial building. Now, the zoning's different, got it. But the use is right there, and both those businesses seem to be able to work together well. But by contrast, we have this situation where it's a completely separate structure, but somehow this is going to be a problem. I think I want to offer the petitioner the opportunity to be heard and to petition or to rezone. I think the uses are there and they're very nearby, and I think Mr. Grant brings up a good question. If they aren't allowed to, are we setting up a taking situation?
Are there any other questions for the petitioner at this time? Brett, did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, thank you. Again, if the ZBA wanted advice on legal aspects, I'm happy to get that. From my lens, speaking as the planning manager, there is a use provided for this property. There's a process to seek alternative uses for the property. I understand that there's a tension here between multiple owners of the condominium units of this comprehensive development. So I just, as you consider public comment and as you deliberate, I would ask that if you find unique circumstances here that do warrant that appeal, if you think it is applicable here, but not applicable in other condominium other condominium ownerships, that would be helpful for us to understand going forward. For example, should the same thing apply? Should a condo owner in a multiple residential unit be able to seek alteration to the zoning for that? And the answer might be yes. there might be different circumstances, but I just want to selfishly, if you can help me so that as you direct the appropriate way that we should be interpreting this, so how we can apply that question in the future. Thank you.
Dave, did you have a question, or is this more appropriate for discussion?
A question for Brett. Specifically, the petitioner raises a second path to rezoning that does not require agreement by the condo owner. And that's a process through the due process of the city to just petition for a rezoning, which still has a pretty rigorous process through the planning commission, which gets staff input into, and finally to city council, where there are 2 votes, 2 presentations. There's a public hearing before the planning commission. There's a public hearing before city council. Why do you think that second path should not apply?
Well, we don't have a rezoning petition, first of all. So I don't know which avenue the petitioner might be thinking about. Both of them require permission from the property owner. If this property is zoned planned unit development, so I think very appropriately, amendment to that requirement would be the appropriate path. Not only does the PUD regulate use, but it obviously includes the site plan in this case, which this unit of the condominium is reliant on other units of the condominium and vice versa. That is a shared physical site development. For example, you don't have a separate drive access to unit 2 than unit 1. I think they're letters, pardon me. So I think that both require property owner application. If this site were to be considered on its own, that is a new site plan that we're going to have to figure out how this site meets the city's standards and development review standards, independent of its conceived, approved, and constructed as a cohesive site development. That's why, from a staff perspective, the PUD seems like the most appropriate method to amend uses for the planned unit development.
But you're not saying that your answer is not speaking to my question really about this other path that's in our code.
So your question is, if they sought rezoning to C3?
Yeah, why can't they just why can't they petition to have their site, which is an independent parcel, geographically an independent parcel, why can't they just submit to have that rezoned? I mean, I understand there are easement issues on drives and maybe sewer and the such, but those sorts of things exist in many private residential developments as well.
No, I agree. I suspect the tensions here between the condominium unit owners are going to remain in that circumstance as well, but that might be a better question posed to the petitioner.
Well, except you're the staff that's saying they don't have it.
But yeah, well, let me try again.
You.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm obviously not effectively answering this. If they were to apply, if we were to determine that they were eligible to reapply for a condominium unit as part of a larger parcel. So right now, this is a single parcel. This is a condominium unit defined, but it's part of a larger single development parcel. And so if we determine somehow that you could apply for rezoning just of that building, that condo is defined just as the building, it actually doesn't include any physical geography outside of that. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know that just the building could not be rezoned because it wouldn't be able to meet the development requirements. They would have to at least identify some other geography that was inclusive of both common areas of the condominium and their unit in order for us to be able to consider zoning that would be able to meet our standards.
So when we looked at that site plan map, you could put it back up, the yellow line around their lot.
That's the condominium unit.
So that's part of their unit too. It's not just the building.
Well, That is their condominium unit, and then they have an ownership share in the common areas.
There's another, the one right above this, I think. No, 64. No, let's try 66. Okay, so this one that says site.
That's the development parcel, and there are multiple condominiums on that.
Okay.
So it would be akin to a residential development where you have the overall site and you might have individual tax parcels for each individual condominium on that, but it's still at a tax parcel as the condominium.
Jeff, did you have a comment?
Yes, I had a point of clarification. The bank building is not on a separate parcel. There's one parcel. It's the Plymouth Green Crossings PUD parcel. It's a unit that is part of a larger condominium.
I see. How many condo members are there? I mean, how many units are there here?
I can't answer that at this point. We may hear testimony during the public commentary section that might clarify that. It's my understanding that there are two primary owners.
May I just clarify one point?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So just so we understand, the Fifth Third property is in fact its own standalone parcel of real estate. Under Michigan law, a condominium unit is an independent, just like a lot. It is recognized as a separate conveyable unit of real estate with all the attributes of real estate. It does share other rights in common with other members of other co-owners in the condominium, but it is a standalone parcel. It has a standalone tax ID. It's taxed independently. Fifth Third can sell it without getting approval or asking for anybody else to sell it. So I just want to make that clear that it is part of a planned unit development district, and it was approved as part of that. But the condominium is a different way of carving up property under Michigan law, and it is a separate unit of real estate.
So I see where we're going. This is a deep question about if potential uses alter with the changing mores of the society and the changing needs of the culture. Have we restricted the use of this unit to a point where it becomes without value? I see.
Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, good. I'm off mute. So I think there are two things I think we should caution ourselves. One, the ZBA is not the city attorney. Number two, we should not play judge. I'm an attorney by legal training and experience, but this is going to end up in court one way or another, and they're just letting their ducks up before they get to circuit court. My own interpretation of what appear to be on the surface two perhaps conflicting parts of the Uniform Development Code, you always work to try to not cross one out, but to read both in compliance. Here, factually, Fifth Third Bank was present at the inception of this PUD. The PUD by itself is a sole zoning ordinance. That statute is more specific and says you need permission of all the condo owners, which are two in this case. The other one talks about rezoning in general. So I think Mr. Breisma is doing a good job arguing for his client, but the way I read the UDC, he's flat out wrong. He's going to have to go to court. I think our job tonight is, without playing attorney, did city staff make a reasonable interpretation of the ordinance language in front of them? That's an easy question, and the answer is yes. Maybe the other interpretation could also have been reasonable, but this is a reasonable one. Tough duties, they need to go to circuit court, and they're going to be there anyway because Plymouth Green Crossing is going to chew at their butt when they get into circuit court. If they try to go the other way, they're going to be there seeking an injunction. Perhaps that may not necessarily be the correct remedy. So I think without overthinking, the answer is the problem is very simple tonight. Did the city staff act reasonably interpreting the language? It's a no-brainer. They did. They're going to be unhappy, so they go to court. That's life.
All right, thank you, Todd. Let's move into the public comment portion. If there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now and press *9 to raise your hand. Once you have raised your hand, city staff will call on you. You will have 3 minutes to speak.
Caller with the phone number ending with 936. You have 3 minutes to address the ZBA. You can press *6 to unmute your phone. Go ahead.
Good evening. As a means of introduction, my name is Mark Wilson, and I'm the co-owner and the practice manager for Arbor Hills Animal Clinic. We're located at 2717 Plymouth Road in Ann Arbor. I want to start by thanking the members of the Zoning Board of Appeal. It's been a long night, and I appreciate you guys listening to this evening. And Jeff, while we're on different sides, Jeff started this conversation with me over a year ago and has been nothing but amazing throughout the process. So Jeff and your team, I want to very sincerely thank you for everything that you guys have done along the way. Arbor Hills has resided at the corner of Plymouth and Nixon in the Plymouth Road Mall for over 36 years. The last 6 years have been under our ownership. The practice has grown beyond the footprint we currently have, and we need to move our facility to house the growing business that is needed in Ann Arbor. Specifically, over the last 12 months, Arbor Hills has averaged over 65 new clients per month, and the Fifth Third Bank property is really the perfect property that would allow for that growth. And honestly, with us sharing that area with the North Campus of U of M, there's very little commercial property that would. And our goal is to be able to stay within the Ann Arbor community. Pre-pandemic, 67% of homes in the United States had at least one dog or cat, and during the pandemic, for a multitude of reasons, the adoption rate of pets has dramatically increased, and veterinarians around the country are seeing just record numbers of new pets and first-time pet owners. And as recently as last night, I met via Zoom with members of the Washtenaw County Veterinary Medical Association. We met to talk about COVID protocols in all of our clinics, and it's really very fair to say that all of the clinics are insanely busy right now, and all of us are struggling to keep up with the demand for veterinary services within the Ann Arbor community. Opportunities for expansion, as we're asking for tonight, is the best chance for us to contribute to meeting this increasing need for veterinary care within the Ann Arbor community. Over the last year, we're a very small business, and we've been working tirelessly with Fifth Third Bank and Mr. Howard to try to finalize this deal. We've spent countless hours, tens of thousands of dollars on attorney fees, architectural designs, property assessments, and we're no closer today than we were a year ago. Mr. Howard has stated in multiple conversations with me about the property that he has no issues with a veterinary clinic residing on this property, which to hear tonight that he has said animals are the issue, I nearly fell out of my seat, because I have many times had him tell me that would not be a problem. Quite to the contrary, he has always indicated that his primary concern had to do with traffic volume. Our clinic, if we were to have 3 full-time doctors, would see only 8 cars per hour. I drove to a local bank branch the other day. They see that many, we see in an hour what they see in we see in a half day what they see in an hour just looking at their drive-thrus and ATMs alone. So, and as was mentioned earlier, we are currently located between Little Caesars Pizza and Rapport, and the animals and the neighbors have never been a problem. We have very wonderful relationships with our neighbors and have had a great relationship with all of them. So we are just asking you to consider that in the decision-making this evening. And again, thank you all for your time.
Anyone else who wishes to speak, please raise your hand.
Caller with the phone number ending with 432. Caller with the phone number ending with 432. Please press *6 to unmute your phone, and you can address the ZBA for 3 minutes.
Hey, good evening. I'm a lawyer. 3 minutes is nowhere near enough time for me. My name is Bill Schlechte. I represent the Plymouth Green Crossings LLC and the Condominium Association. And Mr. Grant is spot on. And I appreciate what the applicant is saying in terms of vets and pets. I have 3 dogs, a Great Dane and 2 Springer Spaniels, and I love them dearly. But that's not the issue. The issue, as Mr. Grant points out, is whether or not the planning department has accurately interpreted the UDC. I put together a comprehensive legal analysis. My client put together some substantive objections. I want to say that this will end up in court, as Mr. Grant says, but the appropriate methodology for it to end up in court is for this ZBA to determine that the planning department has properly interpreted the UDC. Mr. Bruinsma then has the opportunity to appeal timely to the circuit court for the decision by a circuit judge to determine whether or not the provision, which is clearly stating that all owners have to sign, whether or not that is a permissible restriction within the powers of the municipal government. I would also add that it's not just the PUD that is at issue here. I forwarded also the provisions in the condominium documents. Mr. Bruinsma wants to treat this property as a standalone property. It is by no means a standalone property. It's part of a condominium project and is subject to the common elements, subject to the reciprocal easements for access, for sewer, for water, for utilities, for all of these things. You can't just, if this board said that in fact you can, as a condominium unit owner within a project, go ahead and file for rezoning, and your UDC prohibits them from filing a rezoning petition or an amendment to the PUD, that's the way it reads. The department has accurately interpreted it. What you would be doing is setting a precedent for the law in condominium law that's never, ever been the case in Michigan. And I've been doing this for 49 years. I do nothing but real property law. This is unique. So I'm simply saying the way to resolve this is proper interpretation by the department. Let Mr. Bruinsma, once you've determined that, file his appeal with the circuit court, and we'll battle out the legal niceties there. Next, I don't know Mr. Bruinsma, but when I first became involved, was retained by my client last week, my first call was to Mr. Bruinsma to hold out an olive branch to say, we don't want to prohibit any use. What we want to do, Mr. Bruinsma, you're laughing about this, but I held out the olive branch, said, why don't you simply postpone the ZBA meeting to give us an opportunity to have a substantive discussion about what kinds of uses may work. All they've been talking about for the last year is a veterinary clinic. It's this or nothing. That's not the case. In fact, there are many other, and again, I'm getting into the substantive issue, but there are many other economically viable uses. But you need to sit and talk with us. There is no tension as far as I'm concerned, and I'm surprised that Mr. Bruinsma said that he has been rejected with respect to any overtures. I made the overture last week. Lastly, the reason that I'm listening and watching this meeting is because even though there's no formal process for the participation by an objector to a petition or an appeal, nevertheless, my experience is that often ZBA members and sometimes staff have questions that can only be answered by an objector. Okay, well, and my point here is not only are we an objector, but also we are a property owner entitled to the right to have input and consent to any petition to rezone or to amend the PUD. Thank you. And we'll stay online. You can.
If there's anyone else who wishes to speak, please raise your hand.
Seeing no other indications.
Thank you. I will note that we did receive communication from Jeffrey Howard regarding this petition. It was an email that came through with some information from his attorney. And with that, we are in discussion. I'll just say quickly that there's a lot going on here and a lot to consider. And I think it's really easy to get bogged down in a lot of the details and about if it's a veterinary office being proposed or some other use or what the conflict is or non-conflict between the different condominium owners. But what we're being asked to consider this evening and vote on is whether or not we think city staff made an appropriate interpretation of the ordinance requirements. And that's all we're being asked to vote on. So whether or not we agree that a veterinary clinic is an appropriate use or whether or not we think that rezoning is good or bad or otherwise, I think our sole purpose or our sole function with regard to this evening is whether or not the city made an appropriate interpretation or not. for me, whether or not it's the right course of action, I don't know. But PUDs are unique. The whole reason that they're used as a development tool is to provide some flexibility from standard ordinance requirements. And a PUD does more than just regulate the uses. It regulates setbacks for the development. It regulates utilities and access and cross-sharing of resources and common elements and all sorts of other things. So to allow one user to amend a PUD without getting the agreement of all the other property owners that are affected by it, I'm not sure that that's correct. So I think, at least for me, the city's interpretation that yes, all owners within that PUD have to sign off on a PUD amendment is the correct interpretation. And I know from my professional experience in other communities that this is not unique to Ann Arbor, that having all PUD owners sign off on PUD amendments is common in several other communities throughout Michigan. So I don't think our city staff's interpretation is unique in any way from what would be found elsewhere. So that's, I guess, just my 2 cents on it. Mike, did you have a comment?
Yeah, and this you laid it out way more eloquently than I would have. I mean, my point was like, this could be literally any application for any business in the world, and I wouldn't care. Like, that's not in front of us at all. That it's going to be a vet clinic. Like, we should not consider it. Period. And no matter how many vets are needed in Ann Arbor and how many pets aren't getting care, like, it doesn't matter for this. And yeah, I agree with Candace. Like, there's some arguments on both sides. There's a remedy for the petitioner here. They can go to court. And I didn't see anything in the staff's decision that was unreasonable interpreting the PUD reg. So I'm gonna stick with saying it was a reasonable decision by the staff here.
Todd.
I think Julie's hand was up first.
Oh, okay, then Julia.
Thank you, Todd. And I guess this is evidence of my lack of planning background, because when I first read through this stuff, I saw, like, looking at it more as a condo. And I'm like, well, obviously, if you're a condo and you're going to change use, it does affect everybody else. And the other owners do have to have a right to say early on and what's going to happen. So I am definitely leaning, with Todd and supporting the staff. And Todd kept saying yes to the staff, but I think that means I'd be doing a no vote.
Todd, go ahead.
So yeah, I think the Julia, the proposal is by voting yes, we're upholding the city. We're saying they made, and here is my key comment, and maybe Candace, you said it differently, but our job is not to determine what the correct staff decision is or should have been, but did they make a reasonable interpretation? So we're not a court, and these people are going to end up in court. If the provisions of the UDC conflict, and I think they can be read so that they do not, that's going to be sorted out. But our job is, did the staff make a reasonable interpretation, and I believe clearly they did.
Dave.
As the person who was most assertive about questioning the staff on this, I totally agree. The staff was very reasonable in making this decision. In fact, as I look at the whole argument, the many arguments, I think it was the right decision. So I'm comfortable making a motion to uphold the determination of the planning staff. As soon as you want a motion, I'll make a motion and put it on the floor. But I'm going to vote to uphold the staff decision on this.
Is there any other? Yeah, Elizabeth.
I want to thank Candace for laying this out as clearly as she did, because this is what I was sort of getting at with my questions, because we set out a PUD with the idea that we're making all of these exceptions and sort of everybody's sort of agreeing to the terms. And so that's the reasoning behind this particular situation where the participants or the neighbors or the people in the PUD can effectively veto it. And it is unique. We don't typically allow that to happen. We usually go through a process where it's sort of people express their opinions and it's hashed out and then we decide, but this is something special and then there's a reason why it's like this. I just want to clarify again, voting yes on this is upholding the staff decision.
Yes, let me make the motion and then it'll be clear.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion before Dave makes a motion? All right, Dave, it's all you.
ZBA 21-017, 3389 Plymouth Road appeal. Based on findings and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby upholds the determination of the Planning and Development Services Unit that Fifth Third Bank does not have authorization to apply for a rezoning without the approval of all said ownership in the planned unit development, Plymouth Green Crossings.
I have a motion to have support from Todd. Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Dave?
DeVarty, yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Charlotte?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
The city's interpretation is upheld. Moving on, we have no unfinished business. We have dealt with new business, as well as communications, public comment. If there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak to the ZBA regarding any matter, please call in now and press *9 to raise your hand.
Just give it a moment. I see no indication.
All right, thank you, Brett. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion from Chris, support from Charlotte. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
John.
Have a good evening.
John.